Fantastic. All right, everyone, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 18th Planning Board meeting, Town of Monroe. Can we just start, Noreen, with a roll call for attendance?
Anthony Carroll is absent. Lisa
Here.
Bonnie Franson is absent. Jason Sorinsky.
Present.
Jeff Manson.
Here.
John Allegro.
Here.
And Pat Shea.
Here.
Thank you very much. Before we get started, I'd just like to point out fire exits. Of course, we all enter through the main entrance of the building. There's fire exits in the glass doors behind us, behind the curtain, and additionally through this door and out to the left. If I can ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the We have a full agenda tonight, so we're going to jump right in with our first project, J Squared, returning project.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Morganti. I'm the engineer for this application that's before the board, consisting of a two-lot subdivision located off of Harriman Heights Road, near the intersection of 17M. A few weeks ago, we met with several members of the planning board out at the site to take a look at the curb cuts for the project. We had gone over the elevation difference between the road and the top of the berm into the site where the driveways would be located. We took a look at specific trees that the board had considered wanting to save, and we had discussed some other site constraints such as an Orange County Department of Public Works sewer manhole that was located roughly in the middle of the property where the driveway cut would be. And there was some discussion as it related to whether or not we would be looking at one driveway entrance or potentially two driveway entrances in order to try to protect some of the existing trees that are out there. I had noted to the board, members that were there that day, and the consultants, that the topographic constraints associated with the site would require at least a 3-on-1 grading slope from where the driveway was currently proposed, and it would result in at least about an 18-foot width beyond the edge of the driveways, just for grading. So keep in mind, whether or not we shift the driveway left or right, go with one or two driveways, due to the utility trenches, the elevations that are associated with the site, and the grading left and right of the driveways, it becomes, like difficult would be an easy word to use, it becomes near impossible to try to really preserve much of the frontage as it relates to the trees that are associated on this site. I believe there were about 3 or 4 board members out there with us that day. I think another 2 or 3 board members visited the site afterwards. And so we're here tonight to discuss with the board whether or not they are in agreement with what we had kind of shown them. And I just would like to also note to the board, we've done extensive work. I mean, we located all the trees on the entire property, by the way, not just in the frontage of that area. And we've demonstrated several options to try to work with the board in order to preserve these trees. But it just, like I said before, seems very difficult, if not impossible. So I'll solicit feedback from the board and their consultants to see what the decision would be to move forward. We would humbly request from the board that the board permit us to move forward with the 2 driveway option as shown for the reasons that we had discussed earlier, and to make a motion or have a vote tonight on that decision.
Thank you. Let's start with our consultants, get some of their input at this point, and then we'll move on to the board. Sean, can we start with you?
Sure. So the applicant didn't submit any new plans for this evening. He wanted to discuss the site visit. I do agree that the site is difficult because there is a significant amount of grading that has to happen within the right-of-way, both into the site and to widen out to accommodate the grades that have to be met for the county permit for the driveway entrance, because they do have to bring that -2% pitch back from the road into the site. And in order to accommodate the grades without doing a massive retaining wall, they would have to grade further away from the site. I think it did make sense to try to put the driveways as close together towards the center of the property line and try to preserve as much of the trees on the outside, which seemed to be probably the more worthy trees to keep, in my opinion. Obviously, we can get input from the board on that, but
We're in no disagreement with that. I would say a reasonable offset from that sewer manhole is probably 5 feet.
yeah, I mean, that sewer manhole could always be adjusted at the rim, but
Okay. But I'm saying if I left a 5-foot separation from the edge of the manhole to one driveway, the edge of the manhole to another driveway,
Sure.
it might help us out a little bit.
Sure.
If you guys find that reasonable, I would also. Let me just, Paul, do you have any concerns about that? Did you hear what we were talking about?
Yeah, I heard, but I'm not sure how we address the 4 utility trenches on the opposite.
No, those will all stay pretty much in the same kind of in the same area, I'm presuming. The
Well,
util-
the driveway's only 10 feet apart, and I need utility trenches, how do we do that?
Well, actually, that's not a bad.
well, you can put some in between the driveways, but and so I'm just looking to preserve at least some of the grade or some of the.
We'll do the best we can to keep the driveways as close as we can together on either side of that sewer manhole, and we'll try to allocate or locate the utility trenches to minimize the clearing as much as we can. Now, we take no exception to that. We'll do the best we can.
Comment, Sean, or
No, that's about all I had.
Ashley?
Nothing else at this time. One said they didn't submit any or to discuss the site visit and the proposed driveway location as 2 driveways versus the single curb.
Thank you. All right, so I'd like to go through the board, and for those of you who were able to get out to the site on one of the visits, which I think most of us were, I'd just like to get your feedback on the project in general, what you observed out there, and in particular, of course, to what we're focusing on tonight, which is 1 driveway or 2, what you feel about the locations of the driveways, that sort of thing. Jason, can we start with you?
I had not had the chance to go out to the site just yet, but I've driven past it multiple times, just being a resident here. The one concern that I have been thinking about is stormwater. I imagine there's quite a bit of runoff that runs in that, I guess, little ditch between the county road and the trees. Is putting like a culvert pipe underneath the driveways an option?
Yes, a culvert pipe is actually currently proposed under both driveways, actually.
All right.
Thank you. Pat?
I did get to go out and observe the property, looked at the trees. I think there's a comment that many of those trees are ash and will probably be going away. I think it's a challenging plan, but I have no objections to the 2 driveways there. Given that manhole and the importance of it, it's difficult.
Thank you.
So that's it.
John?
I agree with Sean, and having been at the site, especially considering that it's really the only property on, probably for about a half a mile on either side, where that has not been manicured, so to speak. There are homes for a reasonable stretch of road that, do not have that, quote, scenic quality to it. So it kind of makes this property stick out like a sore thumb. So I would vote yes on a motion to allow the 2 driveways today.
Lisa?
I did go out to the site visit. Thanks for having us.
Sure.
It was good to point out the manhole, point out where you're going to be putting the driveways. There are a lot of trees, so when you're talking about having to clear not only the trees but any of the lands, what's grown there, it's probably going to end up looking better than it is right now, just because it is a vacant lot. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to have some trees on the lot, but it was good to go out and see and put it all together, because I was concerned, I was interested in where the manhole cover was. It does seem like the two driveways make much more sense to me anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was also able to get out to the site on the second visit. Want to thank you guys for facilitating that
Sure.
2 different times for us, so that we can get as many of us on the ground. It's always illustrative to look at the plans and the ground and walk it and be able to ask questions in real time. I also think that the 2 driveway solution really is the only alternative for us. I think as close as we can get them together reasonably would be advantageous. Frankly, I think that with where the houses kind of have to be, it's sort of a tight window as to where you can locate the houses. I'm not so sure in this case that a 1 driveway entrance solution would be conducive. I feel like you'd get a real Y effect across, and I'd rather see the impervious surface run a little more straight like it was proposed. And I certainly understand the county's issue in and around in the sewer district and that manhole, and it's there. I think the biggest thing that I observed about the site was in looking around at the surrounding properties and really where it's located, right off of Route 17, the commercial properties that it's behind. Paul gave us some insight into what perhaps might be happening right on 17 in front with the properties there, where Cars is located. And in looking at how the other homes along that part of this scenic road are established, maintained, it seems like what you're proposing is in keeping with what's in the area. Sure. And I frankly think that's very important. And I don't know that I would have necessarily grasped that just from your plans. So I was appreciative of that. I would encourage you, I did discuss with Paul, I see where there are, on the plans, some trees proposed to be added back into the site. I would encourage you to look for more opportunities to do that. I think we can find a balance of providing a yard and not completely screening off the homes with trees, but we're really proposing to lose a lot of trees on this property. And again, I thank Paul for explaining to me some of the difficulties in this particular site and that sort of thing, the challenges that have to be overcome here. But I think it can be mitigated more on the site, and I would hope that we would look to do that. I would encourage that.
We can work with the board with that.
Ashley, is there anything that would hold us back from at least coming to a decision on moving forward with the proposal on 2 driveways, if that's what we chose to do?
So I do have one question. How far are the driveways from the side lot line? Do you know? Because there is a provision where you're allowed, when it's a shared driveway entrance, you could have driveways in the side yard setback. I don't know whether you're allowed to have them, though, if it's not a shared driveway. So that's just something, I know the board was talking about moving them closer together just to be.
Do you have your scale, what you're showing?
I don't, but I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if the board, so basically the provision at issue here is that because they're on a scenic road, you could require them to have a single driveway entrance. So if you wanted tonight to make a motion to either allow them to proceed with 2 separate driveways, 2 separate driveway entrances, you could do so.
I'm just going to wait.
Sure.
So after hearing the feedback from the board, I'd like to move forward with a motion to make a decision tonight that we are comfortable with the 2 driveway solution, and based on our conversation tonight, assuming that there is no provision to not have the driveways in the side yard setback, that we look at getting them as close as possible, reasonably, and needing to provide room, of course, for the utilities to get in as well. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Noreen, can you take us through a vote, please? Thank you.
A quick question, because I had to step out for a
Yes, I
second.
know, I'm sorry.
Does this constitute site plan approval? No, right? Okay, I'll vote aye on that.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Aye.
Agro,
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
One other request for the board. I mean, the plans are, it's a simple project. The plans are in an advanced stage. Even if we move the driveways closer together, the changes are fairly minor. My question to the board would be, is it reasonable to request a public hearing? Since we've got Orange County planning comments back, we've received positive feedback from Orange County Sewer District Number 1, and we know that we have available water through the village of Harriman for the project. So everything's kind of been put together, so it seems like it would be a reasonable request at this point.
So the board does need a complete seeker before they could have the public hearing. And there was, you said you received the Orange County Planning Department comments. There was obviously one about the sewer capacity, and that's something that is relevant to the seeker review, so that's going to have to be addressed before the board can make a determination of significance.
We have correspondence from Sewer District Number 1 that we provided to the board that we have, as a matter of fact, they asked me for final plans to issue me a permit.
I just haven't, we were only on tonight for the purpose of reviewing or discussing the site visit, because it was on, I think, a little last minute, so I haven't had a chance to review that. I'm not sure, whether the board has had a chance to review that as well. We don't have an EAF Part 2 prepared yet, so
I mean,
I would.
it's your decision, but I mean, we could do the EAF Part 2 as part of the public hearing, or?
They have to complete seeker before the public hearing.
Okay,
Before scheduling.
okay.
Right, so let's plan on getting that all done next month, and then we can move on with a public hearing from there.
Okay, super.
Yeah, I think we're right about there, but we're not
Okay.
quite there. But that's what I was concerned about too. All right.
And do you know when that the sewer correspondence was submitted?
I don't know if I have that right on me right
Okay.
now, but I'll re-forward it to Noreen.
If you
and
could.
And she can send it out to everybody else. Okay?
Great, thank you.
Not a problem. All right. Thanks for your time tonight, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm finding that. Okay, with that, our next project on the agenda is DG Management. Good evening. If you'll just introduce yourself for the purpose of the record and give us an overview of where we're at to date.
Sure. Hi, good
Thank
evening. David Higgins from Lankatulli Engineering and Surveying. I'm standing in for John Queenan tonight, who submitted the revised plans for this meeting. As you know, it's a 9-lot subdivision, cluster subdivision. The submission addressed, I know, many of the comments that the town's consultants had in their prior review. I do know there's still some items to be resolved. We're right now finishing the stormwater pollution prevention plan and finishing up some of the fine tuning of the grading. So we're still working on that. We'll be submitting that soon. We are also in the process right now at the Zoning Board of Appeals We're scheduled to meet with them next week for the required variance for the open space area. And the applicant right now is poised to begin drilling the 2 wells for the well testing program. They were hoping to do that later this week. I do know that a letter just came in today from the town's hydrogeologist that had some comments to increase the, I guess, the area of neighboring properties to be included. So we'll review that with our hydrogeologist and coordinate that. I don't think that's going to be a problem in terms of what was requested. But the owner would like to start the drilling process so that when the time comes, they'll be ready to conduct the testing. So.
If we can start with your comments, please.
Sure. So I noted a couple items for the bulk table to be addressed, just some cleanup items, and one that's a little bit more relevant is the steep slopes. So the town has a, for the lot area, has a net lot area calculation which includes steep slopes, or I should say excludes steep slopes that are over 30%. It looks like some of the slopes on some of the lots are over 35%. Which are not accounted for in the net lot area calculation, so that'll have to be addressed. Talked about the SWIP. I noted a couple things regarding the grading and some of the collection of the drainage to be, or how that's going to be addressed in the SWIP. So if that could just be looked at. We talked about the well testing plan. There's a couple notes that are in the zoning code that have to be added regarding the tree preservation as well as the re-subdivision notes. The house relocation notes were added to the plans, but those other 2 will have to be added. Mm-hmm. Regarding the street lights, so they're proposing a street light at the connection of the extension of from the village road. End. I'm trying to use a computer right now. I can't do 2 things at once. All right, so they're proposing a light here, and a light down here. So I spoke to John Sherney. He takes no exception to the locations of the lights. Obviously, we'll have to work out with the town board how the ownership will be, conveyed to the town. But that's something that can probably be done, in the course of the approval process. So I think I had just asked that those lights be less than 2,700 Kelvin for the color temperature. And if that relevant information be submitted on the plans. And then the applicant analysis. View shed analysis from the intersection of East Main and 208 and Scunnamunk Street from here. That's profile BB, looking towards the end of the cul-de-sac, as well as from the O&R Park, looking towards the end of the cul-de-sac. This profile, which is BB, so looking from the intersection of 208 and East Main Street, shows a berm that's proposed right before the house, which would be somewhere in this neighborhood. So that doesn't appear on the grading plan, so that would have to be, if that berm is proposed, and I know we had spoken about it at length at the last planning board meeting, that'll have to be shown on the grading plan. And additionally, these trees that are shown here at the top of the berm and the ones that appear to be on the property in this profile look like they're, proposed trees as part of this application. They're shown at, I believe, 40 to 45 feet in height, which would be a tree. I would suggest size be utilized for what's actually going to be planted at the time of the application, the completion of the application. So, just to give a little bit more better perspective for the short term. I just note the procedural items that we'll need: 239, referral to the Village of Monroe, Health Department major subdivision approval, sewer main extension approval from New York State DEC, acceptance from, as I've said the last few meetings, we should wait until the SWIP is prepared and accepted, and the hydrogeologist well testing completed and accepted prior to making a secret determination. So, other than that, we did do an architectural review and provided comments. There's a few more items that will need to be addressed before we can start selecting, honing in on the. Other than that, that's all I had.
Ashley?
Okay. Sean noted that the house relocation notes were added. If you could have a table too that says how many bedrooms are proposed in each home, because that's something that's tied directly to the house relocation notes. I know you have the floor plans and all that, but just if it's added somewhere.
That's for each
clear.
building?
Yes, for each home,
For each home, okay.
or each dwelling unit, because some of them are two families, so it'll be one for each actual dwelling unit.
Okay.
The architectural plans, they're referring to the project as Scunny Monk Road lot number, but if it could be changed to DG Realty, that way it's all consistent.
Okay.
I know Sean had mentioned the architectural details. I did note that there were some descriptions of the materials and colors that were provided, but there weren't any actual samples or anything like that. So those elements still need to be submitted.
Okay.
There was also talk, we were discussing seeker about a traffic analysis. I haven't seen anything that was submitted
I didn't,
for
John
that.
didn't mention that to me. I wasn't aware of that. So there was previous
So it was
discussion?
we had discussed that back when we were doing the part two. The board wanted a traffic analysis discussing the increase in connection with the existing road network and how it, and the proximity to the 208 Scunny Monk North Main intersection.
Okay. Just a question, are these architectural comments in written form? I'm trying to make the notes, and if there was something in writing, I could just get, review that in the office with John. Otherwise, I gotta take these down. Okay.
You have architectural, I'll send you the
Okay.
comments.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
That is pretty much newly submitted. Oh, a landscaping plan, actually. I know the board's landscape architect had reviewed a prior landscaping plan. I don't believe there's anything that's been submitted since then. Is that right?
No,
She had
I
issued
believe-
comments and then,
Correct, yep.
Okay, all right. So I'll make sure that in our next submission that we have a landscaping plan for the landscape architect to review. Okay.
that's it for,
Thank you. And we'll run through the board for questions or comments. Lisa, can we start with you?
Plans when we got them at the last meeting, and I was happy to see that the bedrooms were clearly marked, which was something I had questioned when we saw John last month. It's a lot to follow, but that was my only comment. Thank you.
John?
I have nothing to add.
Pat?
I notice on the bedrooms there, you have one marked as a baby room, but not a bedroom.
Yeah, I think John had mentioned that to me when we were reviewing the plans last week. That room, he says they have it, there's no closet in the room, so they weren't counting that as a bedroom. I don't know necessarily how the building code looks at that, but it wasn't, he didn't count that as a bedroom because there was no closet in it.
Yeah, we'll have our architect look at how that fits in the code.
Jason?
I have nothing further to add. Just thank you, Ashley, for the reminder on the traffic analysis.
I have a couple of things. In looking at the view shed analysis, so I happen to be in O&R Park this past weekend, and I think the elevation really actually gives a very good depiction of what the view is like from there. With as far back as the first house sits kind of from the cliff line on Arico Terrace, it blocks quite a bit of that. So I think that looked pretty accurate to me. The intersection from, looking at on the section BB, the question I guess I have about that is, I know we talked about the berm last time, and this gives me a better understanding of where John was talking about that being. In looking at this laid in on the actual topography, I'm a little concerned that there's really not enough room between the houses on Lot 8 and where the existing trees are that minimally we're trying to preserve, since so many weren't, to fit a berm. How is that going to be accomplished?
Well, as I mentioned before, I know that we're still working on the drainage and some of the grading. So there's a little bit of fine tuning on the grading that's still to be done. And I believe that was one of the areas that, John said he was tidying up. So on the next submission, you should have a more defined grading plan for that area of the site.
But we think that the berm can be accomplished without removing any additional trees, disturbing any of those additional trees that are there?
I do believe his intention is to maintain something of a berm. I don't know if necessarily it's going to be what was shown on the visual profile.
Okay.
But I believe that's the intent, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, again, I understand that's a sort of a representation of what, how you're thinking that's going to be. We're certainly getting to the part of the year where we're getting back to leaf on, and the foliage that does exist there obscures more of the property than it seems like it would. Certainly I think we'd like to see as much added back from what was removed, and at least be enhanced what's there.
Right.
Frankly, I think some smaller trees behind, as they grow, will fill in the space before you start to really get into the foliage higher up on these mature trees. And that'll really help with some of the screening, particularly of lots 8 and lots 9. In relation to the lighting that's being proposed along the roadway, something I think we have to look at is, a couple of years ago there was a review in the town of Monroe about where existing lights were on all the roadways, and an audit was done, and it was discovered there were many lights in places where, according to what the town was providing for, there were many additional lights beyond that. And so in a cul-de-sac situation like this, if memory serves, it'd be permissible to have one at the end of the cul-de-sac. It'd be permissible to have one at the end of the street that is really, your cul-de-sac connects into the village road, which then intersects with Scunamunk. And while I believe it would be permissible for the town to provide one there, the other two lights along the throat of the cul-de-sac and around the curve, to have something like that, my understanding from the town board is you need to form a lighting district, and the homeowners would have to be responsible for those. So I think that's something we certainly have to take into consideration as to whether those would be permitted and in what form, and then if a lighting district needs to be formed, what does that entail, and all that good stuff. Because 3 lights came down on my street, and when we asked about it, we were told, yeah, you can have them back, just form a lighting district. So it sticks out in my mind.
I don't know if, I didn't talk about this with John, but I wonder if, was there any thought to using, privately owned lamp posts in the fronts of the buildings, near the road, but outside the right-of-way? I mean, that would essentially eliminate the street lights and eliminate the lighting district. You just have privately owned lamp posts that are on private property and paid for, the costs of that are paid for by the individual owners. I don't know if that was discussed, but.
We haven't discussed that here. Are we talking about in front of each of the lots?
Probably, yeah, or probably near the driveways. I mean, I know in my neighborhood, certainly just about everybody's got a fashionable light post that's at the end of the driveway, so when people drive down the road, they see where the entrances are. But again, I didn't review this with John. I didn't realize this was a potential issue.
I don't believe the board asked for any of the lights. They were just provided by the applicant.
Right.
So, I don't know how the board feels about it, but, maybe the lights aren't needed.
To touch on that, Jeff, the audit you had talked about that the town did, is there some kind of report or some kind of requirements?
I think we'd have to request that. Yeah, I
it
know
might
there
be that
are
they do
requirements
require
on where lights are permitted to be provided by the town. But there were many lights that were being provided over and above what the town had agreed years and years ago. And then lights had kind of got added over the years here and there for one reason or another, that sort of thing. We can certainly get more information.
Okay, yeah,
on that.
maybe that's a good starting place to see what's allowed or what's required, if anything, and then.
Yeah, Jim Rogers, who's a former town board member and 40 years with O&R, performed the audit and was working directly with Tony and the rest of the town board on all that. And then quite a number of lights were taken down in the town, not necessarily to everyone's delight, but reasonably so, and saved the town a tremendous amount of money. So, I think we need to be just sensitive to that, and we certainly don't want to approve something that isn't within our purview to approve. So I just want to keep that in mind. No, I think that's really all I have for tonight as well. So I'll just echo what Ashley said about, it was nice that we got the color chart listing what was being proposed for the different units, but since we have architectural review authority, we're going to need a visual.
Actual, samples.
Yeah,
Materials.
it would, and in the past when we've had that, it's been tremendously helpful in making these decisions.
Just to touch on that, our architect had said that there's additional information that's required. That's why I said, we can hold off, and to select colors and textures and whatnot until everything's been provided. So. Yep.
I'm sorry, you were saying that they're not ready to receive the color samples? Is that what I just understood?
Yeah, just because, we don't want to do it piecemeal. I'd prefer to just get the architecturals kind of ironed out and then select the colors and the textures. I think it's just more efficient that way.
Got it, okay.
It would also seem to me that it would be more productive to tackle that after you've completed your process with the ZBA, because there may be some really significant changes that come out of your meetings there.
Right.
Plus the grading and the storm.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Right, and so, if that's going to have an effect on your architecture,
Right,
we'll just tackle it on the far side of that.
right. Okay.
All right. Any questions else that you have? Anything that John
Well,
wanted to bring up that we haven't talked about?
I mean, as I said, we're working on finalizing the SWIP. We'll incorporate these latest comments into the next submission. What they're hoping to be able to do is drill the wells and then start that process. I know we have to coordinate with the hydrogeologist, the town's hydrogeologist, to do that. I believe they had said in their review they wanted to be notified of the schedule so that they could go out and do a spot check as they were, while they were drilling or mobilizing or what. But I know they pulled the permit from the town to do that, so we just want to make sure that we can go ahead and do that. They were planning on doing it later this week.
Yeah, my understanding, based on a conversation with the applicant, is that no trees are required to be taken down in order to get the well rig in. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding as well, yes.
Okay. So.
So no reason from an engineering standpoint why they would need to hold off on that, and that they can move forward on that portion of it?
I don't see any reason why, other than, incorporating the hydrogeologist's comments. I don't see why you couldn't proceed with the well testing, so.
Okay. All right, so we'll review with our hydrogeologist the latest comments, and then they'll coordinate with the town's hydrogeologist, certainly before that starts, but we'll make
Right,
sure that...
I think that's all of our feeling, as long as those comments, and there was nothing really too extraordinary. I was able to review that item today myself. I'd also heard that we're not going to need to remove any trees to get the well drilling equipment in there, and I just want to thank you for all for finding a way to do that. Again, it allows us to preserve as many trees on the site at this juncture.
Understood, yep, thank you.
Sorry, just to touch on the well drilling testing, the hydrogeologist has asked that he, or one of his representatives, be able to witness, periodically witness the testing. So if you could just let our office know, we can let Frank know.
Right, okay. Will do, okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, great, all right, thank you, have a good night.
Next project in front of us tonight is the proposal for Target to amend their site plan.
I have it on jump drive. Oh, she did? Okay. It's the
Said it was just a minor change or two.
I wouldn't worry about it. I think
All right, let him go with the one.
the important parts are in there. I don't even know what she would have sent that was different today, so it should be.
Okay.
We'll go with what you got.
So good evening. If you just reintroduce yourself for the purpose of the record and bring us up to speed. I understand you have a presentation for us tonight. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. Kevin Van Heist with Kimley Horn for the applicant Target Corporation. Since we last met with the board, we've done some site reconnaissance. One of the things that was requested of us when we were here last was to understand what the impact visually might be of the proposed storage containers, primarily from Bailey Farm Road. So we've prepared a quick couple of video drive-bys that show what that looks like, as well as some still shots in the PowerPoint that show you what that looks like. We were also asked to discuss operationally with Target how that store functions, specifically how the 3 existing loading positions in the back of the building function from a day-to-day standpoint, and whether or not those positions could be used for the location of those storage containers. So we can go through the PowerPoint, and then I can touch base on what Target said about those 3 positions.
Please.
So if you go to the next slide, it should automatically start. You may have to hit the space bar. Yeah, there you go. Well, if you go back one, these are the stills. If you get to the slide with the video, try hitting the space bar. No, it's taking you to the next one. It should bring up a play button. Well, it's okay. The still shots will do it too. You can just cycle through the deck. So this is just a shot to show what the entrance of the store looks like. You can go to the next one. Here's what the storage container that we're proposing to use actually looks like. This one is in one of the positions that we're asking for permission to place it. It's a typical storage container. Target uses these across the country. If you go to the next one.
Just another shot of this view from the front of the building. And what we're showing there is that there's no impact to the way the front of the building looks for the customer experience. That storage container is off to the right. It's not in the focus of the center of the store. If you go to the next slide. So this is coming from the south. And there you can see this is the southernmost access point. You are able to see from this vantage point the corner of the storage facility, or the storage unit. There's a significant buffer that exists between Bailey Farm Road and the edge of the parking lot. It's quite wide there. There's a stone wall, there's a berm, and there's existing landscaping. If you go to the next shot, what we're proposing on this approach is the addition of evergreen trees to screen that so that it's no longer visible from this point. If you go to the next one. When you're on Bailey Farm Road, if you look into the site, there's a grade differential there, which you can see here, that really obscures the view of the storage container. You can just see the top of it beyond it. This is in the winter condition, leaf off. If you go to the next one. And this is the northernmost approach, if you're approaching from Larkin. So it's quite well screened here. Obviously, you can't see it. That storage container is in position, but because of your position on the grade and the stone wall and the berm beyond, in addition to the landscaping that exists today, it is obscured. The way that this entrance functions is as you enter from this point, the driver is actually directed away. It's a left turn, so he's not facing towards that storage container, so it's not part of the entrance experience from that point. The southern entrance, it does provide a little bit better view to that area, which is why we're proposing additional landscaping there. Yeah, that should be the end of it. So as far as the operation of the existing loading area goes, Target uses those three positions. One of them is dedicated for recycling, and the other two function for their receiving. So they are using those actively, and that was not something that they were willing to consider. So this is these positions are a little bit different than we originally showed. These are in the bays furthest away from the building, closest to the back of that berm, so that they are kind of tucked in behind the existing landscaping, so we're taking advantage of that to the greatest extent. In terms of parking lot or parking space impact, I'll want to double check, but I think it's 15. It's about 4.5, the length of the container is 40 feet, so it takes about 4.5 spaces up, so assuming that's 5. But I can confirm that. That's it.
On?
So, just, last time you had said that the storage containers are for additional storage of merchandise. Is that still correct?
That's correct.
All
yes.
three?
Yes.
Okay. So we already touched on the parking. Ashley and I had discussed with Ben since the last time they were here, the building inspector, that the proposed storage is allowed in the LI zone, but would require site plan amendment, hence why they're here tonight. So I know last time there was a discussion whether or not they would only be allowed for 2 years as a temporary, and they are allowed to provide the storage containers as permanent storage.
Just to touch on that, that would be obviously conditioned on it being used for storage of other retail goods for the Target store.
Correct.
Already discussed other bays or docks, 2 of them for recycling, so those spots, one of those. I think regarding procedural discretionary, less than 4,000 square feet of proposed addition. So I think it can be type to type 2, but I'll defer to Ashley on that.
Yes, so it is a type 2 action under seeker, so the board can classify it as a type 2 action because it involves less than 4,000 square feet. I don't believe it needs referral to the county. I don't think it's within 500 feet of the Harriman or Woodbury boundary. I think we had looked at that previously. Public hearing's discretionary. As far as, so there's a note on the plan, I think it's from an old plan about updated lighting plan that's
Yeah.
down there, if that could be
We can remove
removed
that.
on,
Yeah, that's from an old plan.
and also if you could add onto the plan, the landscaping that you're proposing?
Yes.
Sorry, just on the landscape. Or does have a land architect that reviewed their site plan, so if you could get that over as soon as possible, we'll get it to them to review.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, we'll start questions and comments with John.
No questions.
Thank you. Pat?
I don't have any question.
Jason?
Storage containers would be for retail use. There's nothing hazardous being stored in there as they relate to retail usage?
No, they're used for the seasonally as the merchandise changes in the
Okay.
store. That's what they use it for.
Like
Nothing
a staging
hazardous.
area for the Christmas stuff at Christmas time?
Correct.
Okay, understood. No more questions.
Lisa?
As far as the storage, there be food?
No.
And from the photos, there's one container, containers, because you talked about, I don't know if others were removed or placed someplace else. How many are you going to have, and is there a limit on, based on maybe the parking, the size of the lot and stuff like that, how many containers, like if we approve it, do we have to approve how many can, I don't know if that's a question for you, but that is my question,
We're proposing, there's one there now, and we're proposing 2 more for a total of 3.
I thought there was property to be,
On the mic.
now I'm just seeing one in the picture. Thank you.
So Lisa, any additional, they would have to get amended approval. So if all that's before you now is 3, if they wanted to add any, it would have to come back to you.
So, was that's how many they're requesting, or is that how many they're allowed?
That's how many they're requesting.
Okay.
And it is tied to the parking. If they take up, half the parking lot with spaces, then that obviously would impact the parking that's required. So that's one thing that we're going to be looking at is the parking analysis to make sure that there's still adequate parking even with the spaces that are being occupied by the units.
So on the diagram that we're looking at, the shaded area, is that where they're going to be located? I'm just,
Red shaded.
let me put my glasses on. Okay. 'Cause I know you were mentioning that, the person here from Target was mentioning that, there's certain view that you can't see. Once you're in the parking lot, you can see them, so, but I get it that maybe from, the main road or from certain angles and entering and exiting, you might not be able to see them, but that was just my concern. Thank you.
I have a question in relation to when we're doing our parking analysis. Are we looking specifically at parking for the Target building or the entire retail center there?
So I was going to look at both. If you recall from the Harriman Business Park and Space application, Langen had done a parking analysis for the site. Now, I believe Target's on a separate lot than the rest of the Harriman Business Park, so I have to look at as to whether or not they included the Target parking or not, and then evaluate it from there. Target may have their own parking calculation when they did their, either subdivision or site plan or both. So we'll just have to look into the file as to, to evaluate what's required versus how many they currently have and are taking away. So that's why I requested, how many parking spaces they'll be taking away.
The container that's there and the containers that will be there, are those owned by Target or are they leased?
I believe they're leased.
Okay. Will they be uniform? Will all the three containers look the same? If they're leased, you don't really have much of a discretion about what the appearance of them are. But can we assume that they'll at least be not not a maroon container, a green container, and a yellow container?
Correct. They use the same vendor for them, so
Okay.
that they would be the same.
Right. I mean, I assume that they can't be custom painted and. Okay.
No, not as leased.
That was my assumption, and that's why I was curious about whether they were leased or not.
And Jeff, you do have architectural review on this, so you could, require that they be a certain color or certain.
Does the company that Target leases from offer a selection of colors, or is it?
Not that I'm aware of, but we can.
Or you could require them to be uniform.
Okay.
Yeah, I can find out.
Thank you. I mean, if they do, that might be germane to our conversation. It may or may not be. But something that I would certainly be in favor of is at least that they be uniform in appearance.
Okay.
I like the newly proposed location for the containers, both from the fact that I always kind of felt that the area they were initially proposed in, those spaces are used. There seem to be, when I'm over by Target, a lot of customers that seem to like that side of the building parking. I'm not 100% sure why, but those areas were still relatively close to the area where I do see people parking and like to access that left side of the building from. I also feel that from a visual perspective, these are in the least obtrusive place. And since you're proposing some additional landscaping, you'll be kind of able to bury it a little bit in there from the back. I assume that in talking with the store itself, that in their observation, they find that those spots are generally not utilized.
That's correct. And we actually I have exhibits that show aerial photography at different times in the year. Those spots are not used. They're the least used spaces in their lot. We understand there's a portion of the employees that are encouraged to park there, but the patrons generally don't park in that section.
So there's additional remaining parking in that area for employees. That was going to be my next question is, do they have restricted parking for employees? And
No.
It's not going to be an issue there.
No.
It might be good if we could get a better understanding of exactly where employees are restricted to park. Just so we can reality check that.
Okay.
Having worked in that situation as an employee on a number of occasions, if for some of those employees that in their mind is their prime spots, that might be worthy of consideration. I don't think that we're going to find that it is based on the layout of that building, but I'd like to protect their interests as well. Any other questions or comments?
I had one.
Thank
just
you.
regarding the parking analysis. If we find that they do need to take out from some of their banked parking, is that something we could ask Target to replenish with whatever the amount of spots they take away with these trailers? Could we ask them to replenish them somewhere else?
I mean, they'll have to meet the required parking or get a variance from the ZBA. I'm not aware if they have any banked parking that was approved, but, I could look into that.
I know I don't know 100%, but I think the spot next to it was on a different lot, and that's where I think that conversation's coming from.
I'm sorry, the spot next to it?
The retail space that in the next building over, it's like
It
retail
is on a
B.
different lot,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
And that's what I'm confused by.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
I have a couple more.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Lisa.
So I don't know that we mentioned if there's any electricity to it, but is there any lights in the containers? Because when we're talking about the employees, a lot of times they're working either after hours, early morning, or in the evening. How are they going to be able to work in there? Is there any power or any light for them to see?
No, there's no power in them, and I don't believe that the intention is that they're used at night. I believe that's a daytime operation.
And the other thing is, if they're leasing this type of store, I don't know if we're allowed to ask this question or not, but have you looked into a warehouse? I know there's these containers at the mall, where the Target is at the mall, I mean, maybe there's a warehouse in between these locations that you wouldn't have to have these containers in the parking areas. I don't know if it's more cost effective or even what the thinking is to have these containers as opposed to warehouse storage. I don't know if other businesses, how they store their stuff, but it's just a question. I was thinking, why this type of storage?
Yeah, they prefer to have it on site so that they're not having to deal with transporting it, handling it twice. This way, it's delivered to the site and it's handled by the store employees on site instead of having to maintain an alternative location.
It's allowed in our code. That was just
Sure.
Evan, when merchandise from the containers is accessed, where are they bringing that into the building? Is it through the landing, through the loading docks around the other side of the building? Is there access along that wall facing where the containers are into their stockroom?
Yeah, I don't know how it's moved into the store. I can find out how they would be accessing it. I don't believe those are peak hour operations, so they may be able to use the front entrance of the store. Generally speaking, it's not a peak hour operation, so I can get an answer about.
Yeah, I'd just be interested, again, in mind of the people who are going to be using them, are we not placing them from a visual perspective somewhere that's going to make this extraordinarily difficult for the people who have to work with them?
Understood.
We want them to serve their purpose for the store.
Okay.
If we're going to approve this at all. So, any other comments or questions? All right. Ashley, anything procedurally we need to take care of tonight at this point then?
So you can move to classify the action as a type 2 under seeker?
And we've done everything that we need to do that.
Yes, so it is a type 2 action because it's under 4,000 square feet of floor area, so it's not subject to any environmental review.
Okay. Any comments or questions about that before we might have a vote on that? Okay. Well, would anybody like to make a motion that we classify this application as a type 2 under SEQA?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you, Jason. Noreen?
Lisa McQuaid,
Aye.
John Allegro,
Aye.
Thought he was sleeping.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Jason Sawinski,
Aye.
Bonnie and
All right. Any other questions or that we can address for you tonight at this stage?
What our next step is?
So the other item there's a public hearing is discretionary, so if you wanted to decide whether to waive that tonight or to hold one.
Any feelings one way or the other whether we should be holding a public hearing on this application?
Frankly, I think this is such a small and minor application, I don't think one is warranted.
Plus, as a reminder, there's an application space. I don't think public hearing required for that, so you may. Sorry.
That certainly sounds sensible to me as well. I also don't think one is warranted in this case. Can I get a motion from somebody that we waive public hearing on this application?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, John. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Noreen, back to you.
McQuaid,
Aye.
John Allegro,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Jason Sawinski,
Aye.
and Bonnie and Anthony are absent.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on to new business. Thank you very much. Our next application is from Orange County West LLC, bring a new project to us. If you'd like to come forward when you're prepared.
Good evening, Neil D. Frischberg, Fabricant Lippman and Frischberg, 1 Harriman Square, Goshen, New York, for the applicant. Good evening.
Neil, can you pull the mic in, please? Thanks. That's better.
Is that better?
Yep. Before you get started, if I may, I'd just like to bring up that Neil Frischberg and I know each other from Goshen, my work at the Berkshire Bank. Neil's firm is located across the street from us. He's our neighbor. There are times when Neil's firm has done some work for one of the other departments of the bank that I do work for, but we have no business relationship in that way. And although I don't see a conflict in this case, in reviewing our code of ethics for the town and New York State requirements, I did, in full disclosure, just want to bring that up and make that available to everyone's attention. Neil, if you'll give us an overview of the project you're bringing before us tonight.
Yeah, it's a simple 2-lot subdivision. We had a site plan prepared by Mr. Brady, who I guess could not be here, but wait, is he here? Oh, there he is. Oh, he is here. All right. I didn't see him come in. I'm sorry. So he is here. It's a simple 2-lot subdivision prepared by Mr. Brady. As you can see from the site plan, at one point there was a lot of little smaller lots. It looks like there is a paper street called Grand Street going through one of the lots. It's my understanding that this paper street was at one point dedicated to the town back in the 1930s, but was never accepted by the town. So you might say for 80 years, the town had the option but did not elect to accept the dedication. So, and because we own the lots, we own to the center line of the street. So it's our position that we own, it would be Grand Street, for one of those, and Spring Street for the other one. So I'm hoping that's not an issue for the board.
Sorry, just to clarify that, was that Grand Street and Spring Street and the portion of Palmer Avenue, or?
Let's see, I see Grand, I see Spring. Yeah, it would be portion of Palmer Avenue as well, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. All those are paper streets. So
I'm sorry, and your applicant owns those paper streets in title, or
yeah,
with the offer dedication?
It's our position that when he purchased the lots, he owned to the center line of the street, and because those streets were dedicated to the town of Monroe back in the 1930s, and the town of Monroe never accepted the dedication.
They were offered but not accepted.
That's right.
Okay.
So it's been, I don't know, 80 years. And the town of Monroe, I guess, didn't want them.
Is there an offer of dedication anywhere, or is that just based on the filing of the map?
It's based on a filed map.
Okay.
From 1930. I forget the exact date, but I did see it in one of the notes. So it's our position that these are the applicant's property. And I'm hoping that's not an issue for the planning board. I had an opportunity to review the notes of Mr. Arnaud or Arnott?
Arnott.
Arnott. So we do have you said the applicant had submitted a survey. I'm assuming you have this site plan, right?
So the subdivision plan was not received as part of the initial application.
Okay.
Mr. Brady was able to provide it.
Do you have this now?
I do now, and it's
Okay.
up on the screen as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, so that takes care of that question of what we're trying to do. We do recognize we need a 288 variance because we don't have frontage on a public road, but we wanted to get a sense from the planning board to make sure that this is an acceptable project before we apply to the ZBA. We do recognize that we may even need an area variance depending upon the actual location of the homes. Other than that, we're prepared to answer any questions you may have. Either myself, Mr. Gibson, Mr. Brady, and Mr. Scavelli are all here.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm trying to wrap my head around what you're doing here. I'm looking at a bunch of 45-foot by 140 some odd feet lots. Are you saying you're consolidating all those lots
Yes, we
into
are.
two separate larger lots?
That's correct.
Okay.
So one
Thanks.
is about 3 acres, the other is, I think it says proposed lot 1, 3.19 acres, proposed lot number 2, 1.34 acres. So you're taking a lot of little lots and making them into 2 bigger lots.
And Grand Street and Spring Street, they really don't exist. They're only on paper and...
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
But part of Palmer exists currently.
Yeah, but not the part that goes to our lots.
So I checked into with John Sherney the list of roads in the town. Palmer Avenue is noted, is the only one noted. Spring and Grand are not, but it is noted as private. The town does not own or maintain Palmer Avenue.
Okay.
So.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, does Palmer Ave currently go to where the intersection with, I guess it's Orchard Street is? Or does it extend beyond that? It looks like there's some buildings across from, oh gosh, it's hard to describe. Along the right side of the map, in front of proposed Lot 3.
If it looks like it extends to about here, I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yep, that's what I was wondering.
Right. That's what it appears to be, improved to.
And I'm assuming, so what you're proposing is that both lots would be accessed from the existing part of Palmer Ave, that little extension that goes past Orchard?
I believe that's correct. Am I right, Mr. Brady?
Thank you.
As we described, there's 24 existing lots in there. So we're looking to consolidate.
If it comes in by a mic, we can't hear you at all. I know, but if you're not on the mic, nobody can hear. Sorry.
There's 24 existing tax lots, and what we're looking to do is consolidate it down to 2 lots. As you can see, there are 2 existing dwellings on Palmer to the east there. And the driveway comes up, you'll see a manhole and a telephone pole, a little right there. That's about the extent of the driveway that services the 2 houses to the left, to the right there. So what we'd like to do is put one house on Lot 1, which actually fronts on the corner of Palmer and the lower one, Orchard Street. So there, it could come out on either street, and then one other lot in the back, we just extend the driveway down the paper portion of Palmer. But there, the town wouldn't be subject to all these little tax lots in the future and paper streets. We could clean all that up, and that's our intent. And I believe we're looking for, we submitted to the building inspector, and he referred us to the planning board. So now we're looking for your guidance as to where we go next. We do realize we need a 280A variance from the ZBA. And so that's where we're at, and see if you have any other questions.
So the bold line that runs down the center of that, I'll call it Palmer Avenue Extension.
Yes.
Okay. That's where the lot line is, but that's not really where the property line is, so to speak, as far as.
Correct. If you see,
that's down the middle of the road, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
as Mr. Fishburne said, that the properties go to the center line of the right-of-way. But if you look, when we did the building envelope, we did it from the right-of-way line to show that we could provide for a dwelling and a driveway within the requirements of the zoning.
I just have a question. Did the applicant consider improving the Palmer Avenue extension, if you will? to private road spec so that a 280A variance could be avoided?
Well, I don't think we could avoid it because that entire section of Palmer is 280, private road. So either way, I think we would need a variance.
Existing dwelling?
The existing
Variances?
Palmer is a private road.
Right, okay.
I mean, unless you wanted to take the position that it's been there and then this was done at a time where the private road was allowed and gives you general access to all those individual lots, otherwise I think.
I don't know if the board can do that since the other lots have had
Yeah.
280A variances, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, and we think, we understand that we need to get a variance.
I assume there's no easement where these, where Grand and Spring and the unimproved portion of Palmer Ave that runs through proposed Lot 2 are. They're paper streets, but there aren't easements on the.
Correct.
Okay.
No easement.
I think what there would be is perhaps reserved that if they're improved, then the other lots in the private neighborhood would be able to use them. That's typically in the deed. I did see, so the deed it was one of the older deeds, I think that's referenced here on the property, and it does talk about owning to the center line of the street, so I do agree with that if these roads were never accepted for dedication, which seems to be the case. As far as the line here for, the property line for, I guess, is this Lot 2 up here? Or Lot 1, rather. So the line that goes along Spring Street, it should be to only the center line of Spring Street because the applicant doesn't own this 4-3 2.1, correct? So the one adjacent to where you're going to, or the two adjacent to where you're going to put the house down there?
4-33?
4-33 and 4-3.2.1.
This line should be moved up to here.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're right, we would agree with that, because 4-3-2.1 went up to the center line of Spring.
Exactly, so they split it.
Just as we would on 4-2-3. So you're right, that line should be in the middle.
But only to the extent of
Yeah,
Brian Gibson, I'm Mr. Fishberg's assistant, and he had me doing some of this research on this, so I'll just say that that's correct, only with regard to the extent that 4-3.2.1 and the other lot have frontage on Spring Street. After that, we own the entire street.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so wherever your property line for this,
Exactly.
wherever you link up to the road, whatever's not abutting it from your road. A couple comments then on that, as we're talking about the map. So it's really, like you had mentioned, are consolidating and then subdividing. So if you could add notes saying, listing all the lots that are going to be combined into Lot 1 and all those that are going to be combined into Lot 2. And when you say that, if you could clarify then that you're going to be also the unimproved paper roads that are being abandoned and also merged into either Lot 1 or Lot 2. So the unimproved portion of Spring Street is going to be going into Lot 1, and then the unimproved portion, whatever you're not going to be improving for the Palmer Ave extension, I guess you're calling it, that'll be merged into. So it does, of course, require the 280A variance. I think that, I don't know if the board wants to talk about, the layout and where it might be helpful to see where you're actually proposing to get the access from each of these roads. That way, when it goes to the ZBA, you want to make sure it's something this board's, reviewed, and if they had any changes to the layout that might impact the variance, that way you have that squared away before you go there. So I don't know if the board has any questions for that, or if you want to see something further on that. Then there's other standard subdivision requirements you'll have to do. A tree plan, I believe this is all undeveloped. Now it's all wooded, is that correct? we do have our Monroe, the Conservation Commission board is back there, that he would, need a copy of the tree plan as well and talk about what trees are there, what should be preserved and all of that. Just standard subdivision notes, but I guess this is really just a preliminary appearance to talk about the 280A and the layout.
That's correct.
Now, we're not creating a new lot. It's really-
The mic, please.
Oh, sorry.
I need it for the minutes,
Yeah, no,
otherwise.
I apologize. We're not creating any new lots. It's really basically a subdivision and lot line change or merging of lots. Is there any way that I don't want to go through a whole subdivision process and trees and conservation analysis and stormwater management. I mean, we're combining, how many acres we got here total? About 4.5 acres for 2 lots, where we're just really adjusting property lines. I mean, we could show the house locations, the driveways, a grading plan and stuff, but, I don't really foresee really more extensive review of it, but, I mean, that's your call, but.
Well, you're going to have more trees and not less trees, because this is all vacant. So it's not like we're
Up to the mic.
It's not as though you're going to have more trees, not less trees, because all this is vacant land now anyway. So the only time we're going to start clear cutting the lots is for the location of the houses.
So that's what it is. So the town of Monroe has a tree preservation law, and it requires you to draw the areas of disturbance, and within that area, show what you're removing, and then you have to replace it on a one-to-one basis, or if not, there's a fee you could pay. So that's something, it's limited to the areas of disturbance, but they do require that for applications that are before the planning board.
Well, forgive me, but I haven't read through the town zoning, but is there a provision for lot line changes? Can this be done?
Let me pull that up.
In that fashion?
Look into it.
I mean, in that regard, he's right, because if you treat this as a lot line change, then this is less, it's a planning board issue, but only as to the changing of the lot lines. On the other hand, I can sort of see Ms. Torrey's point, where if you're putting up a house, you may want to know what trees are being knocked down, but certainly not a whole lot.
If you were merely proposing to consolidate some of this and divide it up into 2 lots for purposes of ownership, maybe between 2 entities or 2 individuals, for their purposes, and that later on down the road they were going to consider what they were going to do with the property, and then either come before us or come before the building inspector with a proposal on what they're going to do. I would see your point, but I don't think we're really talking about merely a lot change. The intent is to redraw the lots from 24 down into 2 and then develop them, correct?
To that point, Jeff, that's exactly what the definition of lot line change says, is that when it's just to correct or revise lot line changes, not to change the lot lines for the purpose of developing the lots. So perhaps it's a subdivision, but obviously Ashley should weigh in.
And I guess so the issue with this is now currently the lots are undersized. I don't believe they're able to be developed, so you would need to combine them. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, well, that's correct. We couldn't develop these lots if we wanted to.
So I think it's really more of, I guess, what would be called a re-subdivision, where you're combining and then re-subdividing in order to get lots that are actually buildable, because currently they're not. So I don't believe that would constitute a lot line change. I mean, again, the tree plan requirement, that's for the limited disturbance. I believe that would be required even if it was just going for a site plan for the homes to the building inspector. I'd have to check on that, but it would be the same, just going to a different person, but it would be the same amount of information that would be needed. I think as far as tonight goes, I guess, I don't know if the board's ready to refer it yet, or if you want to see where they're getting the access from, refer to the ZBA, that is, for the 280A. I don't see, yeah, I guess you have the areas of disturbance, but not the, yeah, just the building envelope, and to see where other infrastructure is going to go. Is there going to be, are these municipal, they're well and sewer?
Yeah,
Are they
we
in
have
the
the building
Discord
envelope,
County?
we have the building envelope shown, and I can tell you now that the two driveways will come out to Palmer Ave, and to get to the one for Lot 2, we would have to extend the driveway up towards the north. But if you require additional information, we could provide that, but
So this Lot 1 would also be getting access from Palmer, or is this Palmer down here at the corner?
Well, I think aesthetically, the house for Lot 1, if it faced Palmer, or even if it faced Orchard, you could do a side entry garage out to Palmer, or you can come out the front, if you face the house to Palmer, come out to Palmer. Either way, I think the best way would be for the driveway for Lot 1 would be to come out to Palmer. And then...
And I guess that would be the front yard, the layout would have to be switched,
Well,
because you're showing the front yard off of,
Yes.
I guess, Orchard.
Well, actually, the way I have it shown, front yard would be on Orchard, so the house would be facing Orchard, but you could come out with the driveway, you could do a side entry garage that would come out to Palmer.
Might be subject to, I'd have to check, but the front yard might be applicable in both, since it's a corner. Do you know, is the property in Orange County Sewer District number 1?
Yes, I believe so, because it is served by sewer. The whole development there is served by sewer. Yeah, the properties in there are served by public sewer with individual wells.
County has sent a letter to the town. There's Moodna Sewer District cannot be given any sewer usage because of the current lack of capacity at Harriman. So only users within the district can be approved.
Okay, yeah, I believe we're in the district and...
Based on the tax records, it does appear that you are, so.
I have a question for Ashley. If we refer the applicant to the ZBA today and they get the needed approvals to create these line changes, are they going to run into a problem with this board because of the shape of that, the regular shape of that lot? Or is that discretionary on our part?
I think that's definitely something that you would want to talk about the layout before referring them, because it might change where they need to improve the roads. So I don't, your code does talk about, preserving different types of layouts and things like that, so it would be discretionary as far as that. There is a provision as far as it's not really a flag lot, I guess. Yeah, I think the layout's something you kind of want to have an understanding of from this board before sending them there. That way it's something that won't be an issue later on.
Because it's kind of irregular lot lines, and it's, if not, yeah. It's still Monday for me. If not, against the code, it's been frowned upon by this board, and I would hate to see the applicant go through all the trouble of going before the ZBA and then coming back to us and having additional problems. So I think it would be good to get that out in the open before the referral occurs.
Have you looked at other layouts at all?
No, I mean, No, basically,
He's more afraid than you guys are.
at least you yell at them too. No, again, this is our first appearance before you to get your direction, and we hadn't looked at any other layouts. This was kind of a first shot at it. I mean, we're open to suggestions if you prefer to see it some other way, but I think this kind of achieved met the bulk requirements for the town with setbacks and lot area, and we're open to suggestions.
So the reason why that one house is in that little jut out at the bottom of the rendering here, is that because of access that's required from whatever part of Palmer Avenue exists?
Are we talking about the existing house or the?
Is that? I guess that's a better question. Is that an existing home at the bottom?
Yeah, the cross-section are existing dwellings.
No, I'm talking about
here?
right there.
That's the building envelope. So
That's where they want to put the
we
house.
could put a house within that.
So if you look at the topography, that's probably the flattest part of the entire site.
Oh, I see. Okay.
See the
Yeah.
topography coming up in here is basically a mountain. These are 2-foot contours, so.
Yeah, the rest of this property is really not developable because of the
Right.
steep slopes in the back. So that's why we were looking to just combine it all, preserve the whole mountainside there, and put 2 dwellings where we could as far as grading is.
I would assume then also the intention would be to place the home on proposed lot 2 towards the front of the building envelope, again, because you get into steeper slopes
Correct.
fairly quickly.
Yes.
As you move back through the envelope. Personally, I feel like the site plan document needs some more work to be where we need it to be before we're able to refer it. Basically, the ZBA is working off the same playbook that we are. They're focused on different things, but it's the same town codes. Like one of the things that I observed that comes up with us time and time again, where there's surrounding lots and where they're developed on, the ownership of those lots is always called out on the plans. I sort of feel like a technical review session would be beneficial so that we can clean up a lot of the little things that we require that here in the town of Monroe, so that you're going with the best possible document when we do refer you. And personally, I would like to see what's ultimately being proposed, an idea of where the homes are going to be, approximate size, where you expect the driveways to be, the other important features. That sort of thing. Again, I think that would give us a much better picture of what we're looking at here. I feel like there's a lot going on this one page. And frankly, at first, as I was reviewing it, it made it a little bit hard to follow exactly what you're proposing here. And we certainly don't want any kind of unclarity before the ZBA, because they're going to have an important decision to make for you, right?
I have another question. What are the dimensions of that one? I'll call it that jut out of, yeah.
At about 100 by 200?
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
So about a half an acre?
Half an acre, right. I think, you're talking about preserving a lot of this land that's, especially on the steep slope areas. I think it would be appealing to this board if you considered a conservation easement in that area, so we make sure that it's protected in perpetuity.
That just brought up a good point. The town does have a net lot area, which does subtract steep slopes, anything over 30%. So you should double check that you're conforming with that section of the bulk table.
Okay.
it looks particularly steep on proposed Lot 2, which is your smaller lot. Obviously, we have to make sure that you stay above the 1 acre net.
Or another variance.
Or another variance.
Want you to get mad at us, and
15 years ago, I did the lot to the right, Cromwell Meadows, and we did a conservation easement in the back of the property, preserved that slope there. I don't see that as an issue.
How heavily treated is the property now?
It's very wooded, very wooded.
Other questions from the board? Other comments? Do the rest of you feel as I do that there's some more work that can be done with the site plan before we are ready to moving on?
Okay, so just to recap, if I'm hearing you, so we'll clean up the items as discussed here, provide more details, and then we'll go for a tech review before coming back to you.
When's our next tech review, Noreen? Do you have that handy?
Second Fridays.
So I believe it's June 11th.
Okay.
Usually happen in the morning at Town Hall at 9:30.
Okay.
And it's with the chairman and the attorney and the engineer.
All right. And how early would you require the plans for that meeting?
It's the same submittal as if you're going to a planning board meeting. So the meetings for June, the submittals are,
Talking to the mic.
I know, I was just thinking, I'm not talking to the mic. Listen, Sean.
He's been waiting all night for that.
I know he has been. Submission is May 27th at noon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You need to submit it digitally?
Both. Everything comes PDF and hard copies now, since we are live.
So I'm wondering if we can agree at least today that Palmer Avenue and Grand Street belong to the applicant, or at least that the town of Monroe is making no claim to Palmer Avenue and Grand Street. I understand Spring Street is an issue because we have to redraw the line.
Well, would that be under the purview of our board, or is that something we have to involve the town board in? Is it their discretion one way or the other?
So I don't know that we could say, I mean, I could say based on as things stand today, but I guess technically, legally, they could turn around tomorrow and say we're going to, accept the dedication. I don't see that happening, but I don't know that that's something.
These two streets that you're talking about, the ones that run through, have been affected by two subdivisions that have been approved by this board. And I think we might get some guidance by going back and seeing how the board treated the streets on those other two subdivisions. And I'll be happy to do so for you and get you some information.
Yeah, if you have the names, certainly.
I have the subdivision map numbers, but I don't have the names.
Okay. Yeah, but we could start with that and see.
Well, Cromwell Meadows is to the right. The paper street never extended into Cromwell Meadows. Cromwell Meadows is the subdivision to the right. And when that was done, the paper streets for Spring and Grant never extended into that parcel. So they
But
would.
the offers were?
There was no paper street ever that extended. Those paper streets terminated on the, I guess, northeast boundary line. Now, to the southwest or westerly side, I do believe they went into the adjoining property, but I don't know what happened to it at that point.
But again, that says paper streets. No part of Grand Street or Spring Street actually exists as an actual road at this point.
No.
Right.
Just vacant land.
Right. It's just something that happens to sit on people's different properties. Yeah, I mean, while I personally don't have an issue with, what you're talking about, I'm just not certain that we have the authority on that.
Just
And
for
I'd want to make sure of
information,
that.
since we know that it got disposed of, that subdivision map where the streets extend was map number 10067. And I took a look at the tax
You know what
lot-
year that was?
10067.
Oh, 67, 1967? Okay.
And what now fronts there now is a large single-family lot that completely ignores the streets. So I assume that those streets have been rendered useless because they don't take you anywhere, or they couldn't take anyone else anywhere, other than, so it may be that they've ceased to have any significance, and we can see what the board did with it in that
Yeah,
subject.
certainly, I'll take a look at that.
But if we have to go to the
It's a little before
town
my-
board, we'd rather not, but if we have to, we'll go to them, but let's just
Yeah, I don't know
continue
that you
where
have
we're
to
at.
go to the town board, because there's no, I mean, you're not, if you're going to be proposing here that the streets are going to be abandoned, the paper streets are essentially abandoned, and they're going to be merged with the lots themselves, so there won't be anything then, once a new map would be filed, there'd be nothing outstanding for, the town board to accept, so I don't think that's an issue. I agree with the, the legal interpretation, the analysis of that.
Anyone else on the board have any comments or questions for the applicants? Pat?
No.
Lisa?
No.
Thank you. John?
No more questions.
And I think I'm good at this point as well. Any other questions we can answer for you at this point?
You could actually withdraw any offer to dedicate that's currently there, just
Okay.
an option.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very, sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, have a wonderful evening.
You too, be well.
Okay, that's all of our projects for this evening. With that, I think I come to the best news of the evening, which is we have no minutes to review, or maybe that's just my best news. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to review before we move to adjourn?
Oop, I'm good.
Good. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So
Since
moved.
Bonnie isn't here, I'm making the motion.
Oh, boy.
All right, you got to give him
You're overruled, Pat.
Pat, would you like to second that?
Yes.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.